Is caught. Diggs, sideline, touchdown, unbelievable.
All right, time for a Sunday night instant reaction here on Kyro Sports to week 1 of the NFL season. The Rams and Lions just wrapped up in an overtime thriller. We're going to get to it all, but first, real quick, if you like having a group chat to talk all things football and the NFL, check out our Discord server with the link in the description of any video on this YouTube channel. We talk about every single game live and all the news throughout the week. Come join and be a part of the conversation. I genuinely want to know your take on everything that's happening in the NFL. So join the Discord server, find that Sports Talk channel, and come tell me everything you think about the NFL. I am also happy to announce that the NFL KyroCast is now on Spotify. So if you prefer that platform for podcasts, you can check me out over there with the link in the description as well. Super excited to be on Spotify. I listen to lots of podcasts over there. So I figured if there are other people out there that prefer their podcasts on that platform, that I'd make it available. If you're wondering what I'd prefer you to watch on, I would still say YouTube. But if you prefer Spotify and it's going to be easier on you to watch, it's totally an option. Or you could just be an absolute stud and watch on both if you need to hear me talk twice. I don't think anyone in the world needs that, but it's available. And as always, in the comments below, let me know what you thought of week 1. How did your team do in their first game of the season? And if you enjoy the show, please leave a like. And if for whatever reason you think this show could be better, leave a dislike and leave a comment letting me know how I can improve. But let's go ahead and get into it. So first off, on Friday night, the Eagles and Packers played in Brazil. I was planning on doing an instant reaction to that game, Friday night Brazil matchup, but I had stayed up pretty much all night the night before preparing the first ever Kyro Sports instant reaction to the Chiefs and Ravens on Thursday night. So I got about 2 hours of sleep, grinded through the work day on Friday, came home, watched the Friday night football game, and came in here, sat down to record the instant reaction, and I just ran out of gas. So I literally pressed record, started to record, and just ran out of gas. I'm like, I can't do this. I have to sleep. I'm seeing freaking demons in the corner because I'm so sleep deprived. So unfortunately, although I was planning to get you back-to-back instant reactions, back-to-back like I was on the cover of Lethal Weapon, it didn't happen that way. But I did watch the game. I did have some thoughts. So something I've talked about before, I don't like hate watching. I know that's like a big thing today, hate watching. I hate watching. Like, things are just more fun when people are more positive about things. Now, you can be like a fan against something, but I don't like hate watching. That being said, I am a hypocrite because Friday night, that Brazil game, I was just an absolute hate watcher. I absolutely despise with every fiber of my being the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. I bet you can't guess what my favorite football team is. That being said, the team I hate more would be the Philadelphia Eagles. So it was only right that in the KyroCast Hater Bowl, the team I hate more would win. And the team that blew me out in the playoffs last season, in the most embarrassing of fashions, would choke the game away. Just to dig it in. We lost to them by 100 in the playoffs, but the Eagles can squeak out a win. So let's actually talk about the game. But the Packers should not have lost that game. They should have been in complete control of it. Jalen Hurts starts the game with 2 early turnovers from his own end zone, pretty much throws one of the worst interceptions I've seen. It was just dumb. Like, you're backed up all that way. It was a poor decision. It was a poor throw. And I have been a Jalen Hurts defender, and I didn't really get all the criticism that there has been over Jalen Hurts. And I always thought that was kind of crazy because I've seen Jalen Hurts do some spectacular things. But when you kind of take a step back, he does make some poor decisions. Like, he is an athlete. Obviously, everyone knows he bench or squats like 500 pounds. He can run the ball. He gets all the rushing touchdowns because of the freaking tush push, which is not nearly as effective without Jason Kelce. But Jalen Hurts is an athlete. He seems like a great dude. Like, off the field, he seems really smart and mature in all of his interviews, like the type of quarterback you'd want leading your team. And he seems like a solid thrower of the football. So I didn't really get all the doubt in Jalen Hurts. But when I saw that first interception to open up their season, it kind of clicked in that moment. Like, oh, shoot. The doubt was founded for me with that first interception. He ended up with 2 interceptions in the game, and I believe a fumble that was lost as well. But I'll tell you who was not any kind of a worry or disappointment. Saquon Barkley on a decent team for the first time ever is a monster. I mean, he is dominant. 3 touchdowns. And how many yards? 109 yards. 2 touchdowns on the ground with a touchdown in the air as well. 3 touchdowns for Saquon Barkley. He was an absolute beast. And I knew he would be. He is just an athlete and a superstar. And it is so good for him to be out of the cursed franchise that is the New York Giants. But I hate that he went from one divisional rival to the next. But he's an absolute superstar. He's such a beast. I knew he would be on this Eagles team. But I was hoping he'd be a little bit less productive, but man, the dude was just unstoppable. Like, in the second half, the Eagles had the lead, and he ripped off a huge run to end the third quarter, and I knew it was probably going to be over. He was just absolutely incredible. A.J. Brown had a huge game, only 5 receptions, 119 yards, and a touchdown. Devontae Smith had a great game as well. The Eagles just ended up rallying and finishing that game. The absolute gut punch late in the game, the Eagles in the fourth quarter, I believe, with the lead, had a 7-minute drive. And the Eagles are just so good at long drives with the lead. But yeah, the Eagles are a frustrating team to root against. It was impressive for them to start out so sloppy, but then rally to a win. And obviously a foreign environment on what seemed to be a horrible field, the way everyone was slipping and sliding around. Another reason I was shocked to see them rally the way they did is all of the like weird drama and noise between Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. I'll just say it. I do not think Nick Sirianni is a good NFL coach. Head coach, at least. I don't like his attitude, his demeanor. He doesn't seem to connect with his players, at least not his quarterback, from the reports that we've heard about. At best, they don't hate each other, or whatever that means. So I don't think, watching that game, I did not think either the Packers or the Eagles were going to end up Super Bowl contenders this year. That being said, the Eagles roster is just immensely talented. Their defense was not good. Their defense just really wasn't good last year, but they have so many talented players. That D-line is still awesome. They still got players like Darius Slay in the secondary. They're just so talented. And then on offense, they've obviously got so many weapons. Saquon now, of course. They still got great pieces on their O-line. Jalen Hurts, I think, is a superstar quarterback, although I am kind of seeing the cracks in his game. But it's week 1. And again, playing in Brazil, like, some mental errors and things like that are maybe excusable, especially if you end up with the win. And then, of course, their receiving weapons. So the Eagles, talent-wise, on paper, are a terrifying team, but with their weird coaching situation, with losing leaders like Jason Kelce, I don't think they're going to be a Super Bowl team this year. But with the talent on that roster, pretty much anything is possible. Then, of course, there was the super disappointing, honestly, injury to Jordan Love after the end of his season last year, with the Packers picking up huge steam. Of course, having that wild upset win over the Cowboys in the wild card round, and then going on to really give the Niners a run for their money in the divisional, and being the youngest team in the NFL last season. The Packers came in with a lot of hype. You know, I think Some people said they could be a Super Bowl contender. I wasn't sure if they'd make it to that level this year, but it's really disappointing that Jordan Love, on literally the second to last play of the game, hurts his calf and is now going to be out, it looks like, a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks. Like, that's over a third of your season that your starting quarterback, who you just paid the bag to, is now out. I don't know who is going to fill in at quarterback, but from what I have seen, I don't think it can be Malik Willis. I mean, I really feel bad for the dude. First round pick, never got anything going in Tennessee. He came in for one snap. Like, I can't judge a player off one snap, but that might have been the worst way he could have come in for that one snap. Like, get the throw off at least or something, dude. But to get dragged down with the ball in your hand when you just have to throw up a Hail Mary prayer, like, he had some time to throw up a ball, but to get tackled with the ball still in your hand is just embarrassing. Like, I don't know what the Packers are going to end up doing. I don't know if he's going to be their only option, but if there is another option that's going to be better than Malik Willis, I honestly don't know if he'll ever play in the NFL again. I cannot see him taking another snap for another team unless he drastically improves somehow. But tough situation. Really sad about Jordan Love. I mean, obviously I'm not a fan of the Packers, but I never root against individuals. I never root for injuries. That's never something that I do. And even if I don't like a team, I can get really excited about players. And I think Jordan Love is an awesome player, exciting player. I really like Jordan Love. So, and it sucks when the really good players in the league are going to miss time and we're not going to get to see them. So, really hate that. But Eagles get the week 1 win. Disappointing for my position on things, but both of these teams are still very exciting teams. I think that's cool. So there was Friday night, but that brings us to the real first week of the 2024 NFL season. Now, I have never in my life before today watched NFL Redzone. I know that's crazy. I have heard about it for actual years, like 10 years. More than that. Since I've started watching football, I have heard and known about NFL Redzone. I just ain't ever paid for it. And I've got so tired of seeing people talk about it online. I felt like I was missing out. Everyone's always talking about Scott Hansen and 7 hours of commercial-free football and all these things that I was like, all right, I'm a huge football fan. I've never experienced this. I'm tired of missing out. So I bit the bullet and got NFL Redzone. This morning was my first time ever watching it, and wow. Just absolutely incredible. It's a little overwhelming at first and almost overstimulating, but in the best way. It literally was such a crazy way to watch the 12 o'clock window of NFL football. Now, I think this is probably a common take that you'll hear people say if they're talking to you about Redzone or selling you on Redzone. It is definitely not something I would do if my team was playing. But when I'm just trying to get as much information and keep up with as many teams as possible, I'm not giving you a Redzone ad. You probably already know all about Redzone. But as someone who had never watched it before today, wow, I cannot believe I'd never experienced that. That is quite the way to experience a day of NFL football. So just had to throw that out there that today was my first time doing that. But let's start with the New Orleans Saints blowing out the Carolina Panthers 47-10. Great win for the Saints, but I think this is honestly more about just how bad the Panthers are. I just feel bad for Bryce Young. He has no help. There's not a great weapon on that team. There's not a good offensive line. There's not a good defense. There's nothing on that team. Because I did, prior to the season, I did some NFL storylines coming into the 2024 season. I did the Cardinals, Ravens, Falcons, and Bills. But I was going to make one as a joke for the Panthers, where the entire video was just going to be me showing a short clip of Bryce Young and just saying the Carolina Panthers are bad. And it was going to be a 7-second video. I did not end up doing that, but I thought about doing that as a joke. I'm sorry to say that almost video was absolutely correct. The Panthers are just horrible. The New Orleans Saints, I will say they impressed me and they play better than I expected, but they are not by any means a powerhouse team in the NFL. I don't expect them to make the playoffs this year, but wow, did they stomp a weak Carolina Panthers team. It sucks too because there was clips of the offseason of like Bryce Young pulling up to training camp and he's in like a t-shirt with a backpack on and everyone's talking about he looks like he's going to like he looks like he's in like his first day of 6th grade and he's small. And the thing is, I watched quite a bit of that game and he does make some good plays, but not at the right times and not to players that can continue to make the play. Bottom line, Bryce Young ended up looking absolutely terrible. 13 of 30 on the day, 2 interceptions, losing 10-47. It was. If there are any Carolina Panthers fans out there, I feel for you. It is looking like it is going to be a long road to any kind of competitive football. And that really sucks. It's wild to me that this team was in the Super Bowl. I mean, it was 9 years ago, not like it was recent. Not like anyone affiliated with the team now was a part of that team that almost got a championship, but it's just sad to see how far this franchise has fallen, and I don't see what the next move is other than to just lose and get draft picks and not trade them away maybe. It's just tough to be a Panthers fan in 2024 for sure. Moving on, another set of bad teams, the Minnesota Vikings, without J.J. McCarthy, who was expected to be their starting quarterback and also, unfortunately, is going to miss the entirety of this season. The Minnesota Vikings beat the New York Giants 28-6. The Giants are just that bad. I expected this to be like a close slop fest of a game. Yes, the Minnesota Vikings do have some good players, but they have so many injuries on their roster. And I thought maybe with all the noise and hate, the Giants would come out with some kind of like a spark, some kind of a chip on their shoulder. Like, all right, we're tired of being mocked and scorned by everybody. We're going to come out here and compete. But the Vikings just ended up rolling them 28-6. Sam Darnold, couple of touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, one of those touchdowns. He's, of course, maybe the best receiver in the NFL. He's a superstar. It's pretty sad to see how bad Daniel Jones plays. 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, barely over 50% passing percentage. I kind of thought, yeah, along the same lines, I thought Daniel Jones was going to come into this season with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, a bit of something to prove with just all the disrespect. But that in the preseason, he threw that horrible from his own end zone pick 6, and that did not give me confidence in his play for this season. And yeah, came out and got stomped by the Vikings. And did it in ugly throwback uniforms. It's bad when you look bad, play bad, get rolled. It's just, and there's the whole offseason hard knocks with the Giants and the like behind the scenes of all their horrible decisions, and it's the same lines as the Panthers. I don't know how you could stomach being a New York football Giants fan right now. I think pretty undoubtedly the 2 worst teams in the NFL are the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants. But the third team I expected to be in that gutter, the NFL gutter. I expected there to be 3 teams who were clearly the worst in the NFL this year. Those teams being the Panthers, the Giants, and the New England Patriots. But the New England Patriots said, you know what? We don't care that we just lost the greatest coach of all time. We do not care that a few years ago we lost the greatest quarterback and football player of all time. We even don't care that we are going up against Heisman winner, Natty winner, Super Bowl appearer, Batty Bagger, Slim Shady lookalike Joe Burrow, in his return, because we're going to go out there and beat the Bengals 16-10. I will say I was worried about Joe Burrow's return. I briefly mentioned that, I think towards the end of the last podcast, the instant reaction to Chiefs-Ravens, because I talked about, very briefly about who could maybe throw a wrench in the AFC this year. And I talked about it's possible that the Bengals could, compete with the Ravens for that division. But I mentioned in that brief little segment that I was a little bit cautious and unsure about how well the Bengals were going to do in Joe Burrow's return. There's so much hype for the Bengals coming into this year. Joe Burrow's back. They're going to be a Super Bowl contender. I was very surprised at how much belief there was in the preseason for the Bengals. Not that I don't believe it's possible, but they don't have the most stacked roster. Like, they've got, obviously, they have Joe Burrow. They've got some great receivers. T. Higgins didn't play today. Jamar Chase did. He was okay. But yeah, I think I was expecting, and I think it is going to take some time for the Bengals to kind of get, reinvigorated and get their mojo back. Also, something I've certainly noticed at least once or twice before today, and it happened again today, Joe Burrow always has a poor week one. I think it was 2 years ago, in week one against the Steelers, he had 5 turnovers. Like, Joe Burrow just seems to struggle at the beginnings of years. I don't know if that's like going to be a forever thing, but it seems to always happen. So I do think the Bengals will, barring any kind of injuries or any massive changes to the status of their team, if they can stay healthy, if they can keep regelling, I do think that they can be a playoff team and maybe make some noise. But definitely a very disappointing start to get a softball, what should be a softball, in week one against just the depleted New England Patriots, and to lose 16-10. And for Joe Burrow to not have a touchdown. He didn't, unless he had a fumble, he didn't turn the ball over. They did lose 2 fumbles, so he might have had a fumble, but he didn't throw any picks. He was 21 of 29, which is 72%. Solid enough. It's not fantastic, but it's solid. But he had 164 yards. I'm not going to pretend like Joe Burrow had a good day at all. He did not. So, disappointing from the Bengals, but I think they can be okay. One thing I do want to mention, and the first ever piece of Kyro Sports content, the first ever episode of the NFL KyroCast in season 0 or whatever of it, the first ever segment we did, it was right before the Bengals and Rams Super Bowl. And I talked about how I thought that was a very interesting Super Bowl because it seemed like probably the only chance either team or either of those quarterbacks were going to get at a Super Bowl for a long, long time. Specifically for the Bengals, I talked about how the Bengals, I don't want to say they got lucky, but they kind of found themselves in the Super Bowl before anyone thought Joe Burrow or that team was going to be ready for that. And they are in a conference with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, Josh Allen and the Bills, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, and other promising quarterbacks. You've got like freaking Justin Herbert and the Chargers, who have done their whole dance but are seemingly on the come up. Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. Everyone knows the AFC is stacked with franchise quarterbacks. So some people competed against this take, but I thought the Bengals needed to make the most of that Super Bowl opportunity because with all the young franchise quarterbacks in that conference, there's absolutely no guarantee Joe Burrow and the Bengals make it back to a Super Bowl. And right now, the way they look today, I'm not seeing, a huge reason to believe that they have a great shot at doing that again this season. I'm not saying they can't. I think they have a better shot than a lot of teams in the AFC. But it's going to be tough for me to see the Bengals beating the Chiefs or the Ravens in the playoffs. I think they'd have or even teams like the Texans who are winning tough games. We'll get to the Texans in a little bit. I think it's going to be really tough for the Bengals in the AFC, and they needed to look a lot better today than they did. Speaking of teams with a lot of hype that disappointed, the Falcons lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers 18-10. Kyle Pitts had the only Atlanta touchdown. I talked about in the preseason storyline for the Falcons about Kyle Pitts in 3 seasons only having 6 touchdowns because the Falcons just can't get a quarterback that can deal the ball out to their young weapons. Kyle Pitts did get a touchdown today, but that was about the only thing good that happened for Atlanta, as the Pittsburgh defense just swallowed them up. It's going to take some time for them to mesh. Cousins threw 2 interceptions. Drake London and Bijan Robinson were pretty much non-existent in the game. It's going to take some time for them to gel, and it definitely, admittedly, to be fair, was a tough first outing for them against Pittsburgh, who still has a phenomenal defense. TJ Watt is a monster. He had a sack, and I think even apart from just his 1 sack, had an incredible game. Was getting involved all over, it looked like. I think he had a bunch of pressures. Also, their starting quarterback for the Steelers, Russell Wilson, didn't play. He apparently had some kind of injury before the game started. So Justin Fields played, which I don't know if that would have made Pittsburgh necessarily more nervous or not. But, I mean, he played well enough. Nothing special, but he had no turnovers. He had 57 yards rushing on the ground. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he didn't turn the ball over. He completed 17 of his 23 passes, which is 74%, which is solid. And I think, I honestly, if I was running Pittsburgh, would want to run Fields over. I agree that Wilson should be the starter right now and see how he does. But if you're not winning games with Wilson, I would probably just play it out with Justin Fields. And if you're going to want to win games, if Tomlin's going to want to keep up his winning record streak or whatever and squeeze into the playoffs again, this might be the way that you're going to have to win games. Safe plays, safe passes, safe completions, inch your way down the field. Justin Fields can run when he's got space to. Everyone knows he's a sensational, phenomenal runner. Just pound the rock down the field as you can, punt, let your defense work, and kick field goals. All 18 of their points were from Chris Boswell, who was 6 of 6 on field goals today. All 18 Pittsburgh points were field goals, and that was enough for them to win. Pretty crazy, but I think that might be the way that Pittsburgh is going to have to win games this year if they're going to be winning games. They also led the time of possession by 11 minutes. So it is a very game-managey type of win. Hold on to the ball, don't turn it over. Play great defense, suffocate the other team, inch the ball down the field, get field goals, get points when you can, and win. So, good win for the Steelers. Disappointing for the Falcons, but it is a tough defense, and it's your first game with everyone together. I will say, I think the Cousins hype was a little bit much. I know a lot of people thought Ritter and the prior quarterbacks were so bad that just getting Cousins, who has been solid, would be, the answer and skyrocket them. If you go from a horrible quarterback to a solid one and everything else seems to be good, shouldn't that be enough to propel you to a much, much higher tier and higher level? In theory, yes, but I think Kirk Cousins was a little bit overvalued and overhyped going into this offseason. I still think the Falcons can maybe be the things they wanted to be going into this year, but definitely I think needed to pump the brakes on the Cousins hype. And if he continues to suck, he sucked today. I'm just being honest. I like Kirk. He sucked today. 2 interceptions, only 155 yards. Not really an excuse other than the Steelers' defense is good and TJ Watt was on my back. It's pretty much your only excuse. So Cousins has got to be better. He's got to live up to the hype more if the Falcons want to be successful. But I do think that is still possible. Let's see. Then we had the Texans barely getting past the Colts. Now, the Texans like the Falcons, like the Bengals, are another one of these teams. Very much hype going on with them going into this season. And they were still good. CJ Stroud was great. 24 of 32. CJ Stroud, 75% completion, no turnovers, 2 touchdowns. CJ Stroud is an incredible quarterback. I don't think his rookie season was a fluke at all. I don't think many people think that. I think he's just that guy. I think he's just that dude. I think CJ Stroud is great. That being said, I do think the Colts are quite underrated. I think they are a sleeper team. I don't think they can be too much, but I think they can compete in that division. And I think they can compete for a playoff spot. I would say Anthony Richardson impressed. He was only 9 of 19 on passing, but 200 and only 9 completions, 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I hope you've seen his first touchdown pass. Anthony Richardson's first touchdown pass was absolutely amazing. I think it was like 60 yards. He's running backwards to the left with like a lineman falling on top of him, a fadeaway 60-yard bomb through the air, a perfection dot. Hits his man in stride for a touchdown. It is a beautiful play. If you've not seen it, go find it. It is an awesome play. He ended up with 2 touchdowns in the air and a touchdown on the ground with 56 rushing yards. He is the dynamic special athlete that everyone's talked about. I just hope and pray that Anthony Richardson can stay healthy, because if so, he is going to produce some of the dopest highlights we have ever seen. If he can stay healthy and have any kind of longevity in his career, he will be a lot of people's favorite football player of all time, because his highlight reel may end up being the dopest thing that has ever been created. This dude is a beast and just spectacular to watch. Incredible TV, for sure. Incredible TV. I can say that about Anthony Richardson. But for the Texans, they did end up with the win in a close one, 29-27. Joe Mixon, prior Bengal, now a Texan, was an absolute workhorse. Joe Mixon, brother, had 33 touches, almost 180 yards, and he had a touchdown, and was a huge part of this Texans win, as they had 23 more plays than the Colts, doubled the time of possession. The Texans had the ball for 40 minutes of this game. The Colts only had the ball for 20 minutes. It's still 29-27, but Joe Mixon with his 33 touches, 30 of which were rushes, was just milking that clock down, and ended up getting the Texans the win. Only other thing I can think to mention from this game is that it was Stephon Diggs' first game with the Texans, and he had 2 touchdowns from CJ Stroud. Both of CJ Stroud's touchdown passes were to Stephon Diggs. So that's really cool. If you listen to Kyro Sports, you listen to Stephon Diggs' name at the beginning of every video. So that's just cool. Stephon Diggs, cool player. I don't think I wrote down anything for this game. I definitely saw early parts of it. I should have written something down, but I didn't. The Cardinals and Bills. I will say, as a, somewhat of a Cardinals rooter, I'll say, I won't say fan, but I do root for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray looked cool in this game. He had 1 touchdown pass. I don't believe he turned it over again unless he fumbled it. The little stat box I'm looking at doesn't show player-specific fumbles. It'll show team fumbles. There was a fumble lost from the Cardinals. I don't know if that was Kyler or not. But he had a touchdown and 57 yards rushing, and he looked good in a lot of this game. But the Bills, who struggled early, I think they were losing at least 10-0 at the beginning. Maybe even more. They did end up rallying. Josh Allen, 18 of 23 passing, 2 touchdowns, and 2 rushing touchdowns. 4 touchdowns on the day for Josh Allen, who, without a lot of help, ended up clutching out the win. So big time for the Bills. They were heavily favored in this game, but I expected it to be a little bit closer than people were thinking it would be. But I did not expect it to be the Cardinals with an early lead, the Bills having to make a comeback and only winning by 6. Definitely did not expect that. But regardless, a good win for the Bills. And I think the Cardinals have a lot that they can build off of from that game. James Conner looked pretty good as well from what I saw. So I think the Cardinals have a lot to hang their hat on, and the Bills got a much-needed Week 1 win. Then there was the Titans and the Bears. Caleb Williams' debut was pretty disappointing. brother did not crack 100 yards passing. 14 of 29, not even 50% completion. He had 93 passing yards. Didn't crack 100 yards passing. Pretty disappointing. He was literally carried by his defense. The Bears had 148 total yards of offense. I did see at one point Keenan Allen dropped a would-be touchdown pass, so it wasn't all Caleb's fault. His weapons were not really helping him out, but the Bears offense did pretty much nothing, and their defense single-handedly won that game. I was pretty impressed by the Titans, especially in the first half. Will Levis had some great plays that I saw. Tony Pollard had a big touchdown run. But the second half, the Titans just kind of crumbled. I saw the Bears ended up with huge takeaways, 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery. I think, unless I'm mistaken, all were in the second half as the Bears came back and won. But it had nothing to do with the offense, had nothing to do with, Mahomes 2.0, the sensational first overall pick, Caleb Williams. Very disappointing in his first ever NFL game, but he is the first rookie to start and win his first ever NFL game since 2002. So he did make history from the last 22 years. He can say that, but it wasn't really thanks to him much at all. But moving on to the Jaguars and Dolphins. The Jaguars were winning, was it 17-0? No, it wasn't 17-0. It might have been 14-0. But the Jaguars were winning big early, but ended up losing 17-20 to the Miami Dolphins. Simply put, Trevor Lawrence has to be better. He just got that massive payday in the offseason, and 12 of 21, 162 yards. You just got to be better. It has to be. It's time. He has been in the league long enough. This is his 4th season in the NFL. He got his massive payday without really proving much other than one great comeback playoff win against the Chargers a couple years ago. It's time. I understand it's not like he has a superstar receiver, but he's got weapons. Christian Kirk is not bad. Gabe Davis is very solid. He's got a great running back, Travis Etienne. It's time, Trevor. I have rooted for Trevor Lawrence. I think he's a spectacular talent. It's time for you to get it together, dude. I don't know if there's coaching to blame or what, but I'm ready for Trevor Lawrence to take that next step, and I hope he does. Cam Little, I do want to mention this. Cam Little was a fantastic kicker for the Arkansas Razorbacks. That's that hometown college team, baby. It's my hometown, not really hometown, but home state, Arkansas Razorbacks. Incredible kicker for us throughout his college career. Now on the Jacksonville Jaguars, he was perfect in his rookie debut. 2 of 2 from extra points and a 53-yard field goal for his first ever field goal attempted in the NFL. So that's pretty cool for him. But yeah, the Jaguars kind of choked. But for the Dolphins, Devon Achane had a great day with 76 receiving yards and a rushing touchdown. Didn't have a huge rushing day, 2.4 yards per carry, 24 rushing yards, but he did get a touchdown rushing and 76 yards receiving, so very nice back to have out of the backfield. Jalen Waddle had over 100 yards receiving, and that man, Tyreek Hill, is such a stud. Everyone knows he was the number 1 voted player in the NFL. Obviously, I think the best and most valuable player in the NFL is Patrick Mahomes, but if we're talking about the best players in the NFL, Tyreek Hill is absolutely up there in that conversation. So the number 1 player in the NFL, Tyreek Hill, absolutely incredible. He had an 80-yard touchdown in this game after this morning being detained for some kind of traffic driving violation. I assume he was speeding or something. I saw a freaking disgusting video of him when he was being arrested, and just completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary what I saw in the video of him getting arrested. That really pissed me off, but it fired me up when I saw him come out today and absolutely torch, as he always does. His 80-yard touchdown was freaking sick. The brother is just lightning. Everyone knows the amazing things that Tyreek Hill can do. And then I absolutely freaking love. The touchdown celebration he did on his massive touchdown, puts his arms behind his back and has a Waddle act out, cuffing him and walking him away. That goes hard, dude. To get arrested the morning of your 12 o'clock game on the way to the game, then to get to the game and ball out for 130 yards and a touchdown, including an 80-yard touchdown, and then for your celebration to act out getting arrested, is so freaking sick. Tyreek Hill is one of my favorite football players to ever walk the earth, just for the way that he plays football. He is electrifying, one of the most fun players to watch play football, and that was a freaking cool moment. All right, and from the last game from the early window, the Los Angeles Chargers defeated the Las Vegas Raiders 22-10 in Jim Harbaugh's debut as the Chargers head coach. Wasn't a spectacular game. Justin Herbert played well enough, nothing crazy. He had a touchdown. Huge game from J.K. Dobbins, who on only 10 carries had 135 yards and a touchdown. I'm assuming he had a big touchdown run or something of the sort. Again, nothing crazy from this game that I have seen. I don't think I saw a single bit of this game today, so I'm just kind of looking at this. So if you noticed something crazy or had a big takeaway from this game that I missed out on, please let me know. But from what I can see, it seems like it was Jim Harbaugh implementing his tough football culture. The Raiders are not a spectacular team by any means. So definitely a solid team to get as your week one opponent if you're looking to build some momentum. The Chargers got 3 takeaways. So the defense certainly played well. The Raiders, I don't think, have much expectations this year. So it's a loss, which is always disappointing, but I don't know if you're a Raiders fan, if you're expecting much more. But Harbaugh does get the win in his first game as the head coach of the Chargers. Moving on to the 3 o'clock window, the Seattle Seahawks defeated the Denver Broncos. Not much to take away from this game from me, other than, although he made it close, Bo Nix was not as special as some people were hyping him up to be. I'm not saying he's not special or that he is not going to be special, but in this game, he did not live up to some of the hype that I've been hearing recently. I know he had a great preseason and looks the part, and I think he will be a very good quarterback in this league, but only ended up with 138 yards and 2 interceptions. He threw 42 times in his NFL debut, which is quite a lot for a rookie in his first ever NFL game. He did have a rushing touchdown, but as a passer, a little over 50%, no touchdowns in the air, and threw 2 interceptions. So that's tough. But so today he wasn't as special as some of the hype I've been hearing, but I still think he could be fine. He did make it close, though, as the Seahawks would only win this game by 6 points, but it was a win for Seattle. Geno Smith kind of played a Geno Smith game. Not super impressive, but was able to get the win. Kenneth Walker, bit of a workhorse today. 20 carries, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. I'm a huge Kenneth Walker fan, so love to see that. DK Metcalf, disappointing. Didn't really do much. 3 catches, 29 yards. Nothing to write home about. But solid win for the Seattle Seahawks. The Denver Broncos and the Seahawks have a bit of, a cute little rivalry, not anything real, especially with Russell Wilson not even on the Broncos anymore. But for a bit, there was a fun little Seahawks-Broncos rivalry. So when I see those teams matched up, that's still what I think about. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers handled the Washington Commanders 37-20. And dude, Baker Mayfield was sensational. Did he have the best day for a quarterback today? I would have to look at everything side by side to say that for sure. But Baker Mayfield, 24 of 30, 80% completion, 4 passing touchdowns, no turnovers. Let him bake. Let him bake. Incredible game for Baker Mayfield. And it's just so fun to see him having a bit of success in the NFL. Struggled on the Browns for a while when probably wasn't mostly his fault, even though he got them their first playoff win and however long it was. Was kind of run out of Cleveland and struggled to find footing for a while. Played for the Panthers very briefly before getting kicked out there too. Had that really fun and special debut with the Rams, but that was an extremely brief and short-lived home. Found himself on Tampa Bay last year and had a very solid season. Got a playoff win against Philadelphia, and then comes in this year, and it is against the Commanders, who are not to this point, much of a formidable foe. But to come out, throw 24 of 30, almost 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, and not turn the ball over. It's just good to see Baker Mayfield having success in the NFL after a very, very tough first several years to his career. Also really cool to see Mike Evans still churning it out. He had 2 touchdowns today, and Mike Evans, just a 6'5" beast of a receiver. So cool to see a player be so consistent for so long. I'm a big Mike Evans fan. He's just a cool player and has been so consistently good for so long, and just cool to see Mike Evans. This was the debut for Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels. 71% completion, didn't throw a pick, 184 yards passing. He did have 88 yards on the ground and 2 rushing touchdowns. So as we knew coming into this, he was the Heisman winner last season in college for LSU. He is a dynamic runner. Like I said, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. So that's cool. I think Jaden Daniels is a great player. I think he's going to be a great player. I think the Commanders just aren't great, at least right now. So definitely a lot to build on for Washington. I mean, their entire franchise, literal top to literal bottom, has been completely shuffled. So they have a lot of new faces and a lot of different places that are having to mesh and gel and get affiliated with each other for the first time. So I think the future is promising for Washington. And I think Jaden Daniels is, certainly the quarterback of the future. So I'm very interested to see where Washington goes moving forward. So I don't think they need to be super disappointed from today. And I think the Buccaneers should be very pleased with how they did today. The Dallas Cowboys in Cleveland defeated the Browns 33-17. And the biggest story for the Cowboys today was that this morning, the morning of game day, Dak Prescott, Dakota Prescott, was made the highest paid player in the history of the National Football League. He signed a 4-year, $60 million per year deal, nearly all of it guaranteed. When I read the news this morning, what I said in the Discord sports talk channel that I plugged at the beginning of this podcast episode was, don't talk to me. I will need time to process. And I've had a little bit of time to process. And I still feel like I'm processing. I could talk forever about Dak Prescott and this contract and all the nuances to it, all the reasons to be in support or not in support of it. And I don't feel like doing all that right now in this episode. I did a whole 18-minute on its own episode for CeeDee Lamb's contract. I may do something like that for Dak's contract, or I may not. There's a lot I could say about it. I just don't really feel like it. Mostly because at this point, it's done. Dak Prescott is the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys for the next 4 years. We are not going to have to wonder about Trey Lance anymore. He kind of sealed his own fate with 5 interceptions against the Chargers' 5th strings in the preseason game. I don't think there were any quarterbacks coming down the pipeline through the draft that we could hope for that were going to be game-changing anytime soon. And Dak Prescott is a very solid NFL quarterback. He has not to this point proven to be, one of those dynamic superstar franchise truly changing guys. He's not a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson. But he's outside that top tier in that second tier, and he's one of the best of that second tier. And it's hard for anyone to unsee the playoff losses. It seems there's always an embarrassing end to the season. And particularly Before today, the last game we'd seen Dak Prescott play was getting absolutely annihilated at home against the youngest team in the NFL, multiple turnovers, and it's hard to unsee that. And it's hard to forget that, especially when your playoff record is 2-5. I talked about in that CD Lamb video, and I've talked about a lot before how Cowboys fans at this point are tired of the regular season. We just want playoff success. That's all we want. It's hard to care about the regular season anymore when we haven't made it past the second round in 28 years. Dak's playoff record is 2-5. I get the people. I 100% get the people who are not gonna like and don't like this massive extension. But what I have to say in support of it is undoubtedly, without argument, last season was the best season of Dak's career. So he is coming off the best season of his career. Finished second in MVP voting. He was incredibly productive last season. And the Cowboys were a Super Bowl contending team, at least in the discussion of the NFL world, the entire season before the Green Bay playoff game. There were dips in that narrative with early losses to like Arizona and an embarrassing loss to San Francisco, but the Cowboys were always in that bubble. And Dak had an incredible season, the best season he'd ever had. Coming off of that season, and with a lot of the pieces of this team still intact, there's not a better option for right now that the Cowboys could have taken other than Dak Prescott. It's not going to be Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance has a lot of raw talent, or a lot of raw physical skills, but the decision making that he had put on display and the sample sizes we've been given during his time in San Francisco and in his preseason games, his decision making and just knowledge of the game and reaction time and all that is not where it needs to be to play starting caliber, playoff caliber, Super Bowl caliber NFL football right now. And the time it would take them to reach that level, if he ever did, this Cowboys team doesn't have time for. And there wasn't like a free agent quarterback to get that would be any better than Dak. There's just no better option than Dak. And that's kind of been the conversation about Dak and this Cowboys quarterback situation for the last few years. But I do think it is promising that Dak is coming off the best season of his career, and there just wasn't a better option. I talked about in that CD Lamb video, I probably fleshed it out better in that video than I will right now, but it's definitely tough to not to root for the team. It's tough to believe that a team can be better than they were the year prior when on paper things don't seem to have improved, but on paper isn't all that matters. I'm not saying I think the Cowboys are going to be winning a Super Bowl, but I don't think they should just throw in the towel or that it can be completely written off. So, anyways, even though I do think today is a very good day to be a Cowboys fan, and we will have to see where the deal ends up. But today, got to win. Good day to be a Cowboys fan. Although we have a now $60 million quarterback, $60 million per year quarterback. He didn't have to do much in the game today. Neither did second highest paid wide receiver CD Lamb. Neither of them really did much in this game. Dak only threw one touchdown to Brandon Cooks in the first half. Did not have a touchdown after that. CD Lamb only had 3 catches for 25 yards. Although CD Lamb did rush it. Or no, I'm sorry. He rushed it 3 times for 25 yards. He had 5 catches for 61 yards. So not like a bad day, but he didn't have to do much. The Cowboys defense dominated, as I was hoping they would, against a struggling Cleveland Browns offense. I will say the Browns offense was even worse than I expected. Deshaun Watson has completely crumbled. Obviously, he has no one to blame but himself. It's completely his fault. The mistakes that he made and the things that he did. It's surprising that he got the massive deal that he did in the midst of all that. But, I mean, you can just see it on his face when he's out there. He just looks like a shell of a man. And I don't feel bad for him in the sense of, like, any sympathy for him getting the consequences of his actions. But it is hard to look at the face of a man who is completely lost what was such a promising life to now just be chasing the ghost of that and just being humiliated. It's tough to watch. Deshaun Watson's story is very tragic. And again, not tragic in the sense of feeling bad for him, but tragic in the sense of a person with so much promise throwing it all away because of their own mistakes. It's hard to watch. But on the positive Cowboys fan side, Ezekiel Elliott is back, and I have not seen him move like he moved today in I don't know how long. I did not know he still had it in him. In the very first play of the Dallas Cowboys season, Zeke leaps over a man. I don't remember the last time I saw Zeke leap. I do think I saw a highlight of him doing it with the Patriots last season. I think he had a leap into that, like a leap and a touchdown, like on the same play for the Patriots last year. But Zeke looked good today, honestly. He had a touchdown. He looked pretty good. He ended up with only 40 rushing yards, but 4 yards to carry is honestly better than I expected for Zeke. So I don't know if he'll keep it up, but I was completely fine and content with Ezekiel Elliott's play today. On defense, like I said, they dominated. Rookie, what's his name? I think it's Kalen Carson, 5th round rookie. Seemed to be everywhere today. I think Deshaun was trying not to throw it towards Trayvon Diggs most of the game, and so with Deron Bland out, throwing it at the rookie was probably the game plan. But I was really impressed with Kalen Carson. He did the one touchdown they ended up throwing to Jerry Jeudy was on Carson, but even in spite of that, I was very impressed with how the 5th round rookie played in his first ever NFL game. Parsons got a sack. He was making pressures all day. And Trayvon Diggs, who is my favorite football player right now, he ended up with an interception, which just makes me so happy. So that was really fun for me. So, like I said, overall, good day to be a Cowboys fan. But we'll have to see what the future holds and how this Dak Prescott contract looks in retrospect in the future. But those were the 3 o'clock window games, and the last game of NFL football Sunday. We do still have Monday Night Football tomorrow night, but tonight was the Rams versus the Lions, an overtime grinder of a game. The Lions would end up taking the win 20-26 in overtime. I just got to say, this Rams-Lions rivalry is just a great, fun rivalry. Everyone knows the story of Jared Goff, drafted first overall by the Rams, makes it to a Super Bowl with them, has a horrible offensive showing, losing to the New England Patriots in a defensive grind-out Super Bowl. Not many people remember that Super Bowl fondly. It was not extremely exciting. But Jared Goff would end up being moved to the Detroit Lions. Matt Stafford, who had a very disappointing career on the Lions, they can never seem to find success, now goes to the Rams, and they end up winning a Super Bowl in Matt Stafford's first year there. But now the Rams are kind of declining, and the Lions have become this exciting, fresh, fantastic team that made it to the conference championship last year, was up freaking 24 points or whatever to the San Francisco 49ers with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. They did end up choking that game away, which was vomit-inducing, but this Lions team, dude, is so fun. For the Rams, I gotta say Cooper Kupp is still a machine. I keep thinking, he's getting old. He's had, probably the greatest wide receiver season of all time. That year they won the Super Bowl, but he's had some injuries. He's getting old. I keep thinking Cooper Kupp is probably, fizzling out. And then new season, new Rams, new Cooper Kupp. He comes out with 110 yards and a touchdown. He is still a machine. And I've got to give Matthew Stafford his props. I am a little bit of a Matthew Stafford hater. I never was a Matthew Stafford hater. I've always thought he's a solid quarterback. I've always liked him. But then he came to the Rams, got that Super Bowl win, and I think got blown very high out of proportion. I do think he is a great quarterback. I don't think Matthew Stafford is bad in any sense, but I thought he got a little bit overrated after that Super Bowl run. I think people were given him a little bit more credit than he deserved with how incredibly stacked his team was. There's the whole Hall of Fame argument on if Matthew Stafford deserved to be in the Hall of Fame after having, a decade of losing but decent numbers in a passing era of football and then getting one Super Bowl on a stacked team. So I try not to, I'm not an actual Matthew Stafford hater, but I try to bring down that what I see as overrating of him. But I've got to give him his props, dude. At 36 years old, he's throwing it 49 times in a game and still making sweet and impressive throws. There was that really sick one late in the game that was like a little no look on this, like on the left side of the field. I made a joke in the Discord that I was a little Mahomey. And what's really funny is that I mentioned in the Chiefs-Ravens game on Thursday that I hate it when people say Matt Stafford was doing this 10 years ago, talking about like Mahomes' play style and highlights. And that was what is known today as like a Mahomes level throw. Stafford, and I've seen the highlights of Stafford doing similar things before, but it was just funny for me to mention that on Thursday and then him to come out Sunday night and in a big spot late in the game, make that type of play. So I've got to give Stafford his props. He is 36 years old and still doing it. So again, I'm not a Matthew Stafford hater. I just try to bring down the hype from that one season. But I got to give him his flowers when he deserves it for sure. Absolutely. But as good as Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford still are, the Rams do not have Aaron Donald anymore. And I think that showed with their defense. But this Detroit team is just different, dude. The culture that Dan Campbell has embedded into that franchise is incredible. It was mocked in the beginning. Everyone has seen that first Dan Campbell interview about biting kneecaps and all that. But their tough, smash mouth style of football prevails. It prevailed today. It prevailed a lot last season. They are just a gritty, emotional, tough, physical team. I can't think of anyone that hates the Lions other than some like rivalry reason. But this Lions team is one of my favorite teams I've watched in a long time. They're so fun. And they're so tough. It's like that, like old school, like style of football, like running it down their throat. Like that's their style of football. They just have like a tough culture. And it's fun, especially in this day and age when there's a lot of what people might see as like soft football, soft teams, soft rules, soft whatever. Detroit is a tough, physical, gritty team. And in this gritty, down to the wire game, the Rams were gassed. The Rams were exhausted by the end of this game. They mentioned in the broadcast about how it's week 1 and these athletes aren't in like their prime physical shape yet because they're not playing in the preseason. You only get so much, conditioning and practice. You don't condition for 4 full quarters and an overtime period of physical football against a solid, great Super Bowl contending Detroit Lions team. And the tough and physical Lions were more ready for a marathon blow for blow fight than the Rams were. Like even when the Rams went on a 17-0 run in this game, the Lions held on and they outpaced them by the end. Aiden Hutchinson on defense, I've loved him since he was a rookie. I remember he was one of the few people. I'm not a huge college football guy at all, so it's rare that I know a ton about players coming out of the draft unless like a Caleb Williams that everyone's heard of or something like that. I will just have to have happened to come across a player that caught my attention that I stuck with. And one of those players was Aiden Hutchinson. I was aware of Aiden Hutchinson when he was drafted. And so I was very interested to see how he did in the NFL on the Lions. And he is just an absolute monster. And he's not just a monster, he is clutch. He made the last play of the fourth quarter to end the Rams' hopes of ending the game before overtime. And he's just a beast. He is the anchor of that defense. And I do think Aiden Hutchinson. If there's going to be a one best player on the Lions, I might give it like a lineman like Penei Sewell, but I think the best player on the Detroit Lions is Aiden Hutchinson. And that showed tonight. He is just a beast. I know he had at least one sack, but it might have been more. No, just the one sack, but regardless, an absolute monster. I was also very happy to see Jameson Williams have a big night. He had a lot of hype coming out of college, extremely fast receiver, extremely special athlete, dealt with suspensions and all that. It just, with a lot of hype and talent coming out of college, at a very slow, sputtering start to his NFL career, but it was nice to see him really finally start to get it going. And he had 121 yards and a touchdown tonight. Big fan of Jameson Williams and players like that overcoming some early struggles and seeming to be reaching their potential. So really cool for that. But as good as Aiden Hutchinson is, as good as Jameson Williams was turning out to be, this team, without a doubt, runs on that running back duo and that offensive line. I mean, that running back duo. Unstoppable. The whole game, the first half, they were pretty good. The second half, the whole team wasn't really doing much. But then in overtime, dude, David Montgomery was the king of that overtime. And Gibbs was awesome too. Gibbs ended up with 34 receiving yards, and he also had 40 rushing yards and a touchdown. So that's 74 yards and a touchdown for Gibbs. Montgomery, 91 rushing yards and a touchdown. His touchdown being the game-winning touchdown in overtime. If you watch the overtime period, Montgomery was unstoppable. Opened overtime with like a 20-yard rush and like a 10-yard rush. And then Gibbs came in. He gets like a 10-yard rush, then another like 10-yard rush. Then they punched in with Montgomery. I mean, it was just a gut punch, nose punch, gut punch, left hook, right down the throat, Montgomery for the win. It was so cool. This Lions team is a special team. They're just a special team. And I think they're undoubtedly a Super Bowl contender. I think their culture is just fun and cool and easy to get behind. So I'm definitely, if I'm going to be a bandwagon of a team this year, it might be the Lions. They're a fun team. And just looking at a franchise that has struggled so much for so long, it's really, really cool to see them have such an exciting team with so much promise for success. But that running back duo between David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is just awesome. And then you've got that incredible offensive line that makes it all possible. And Jared Goff, who definitely could have played better, is a good enough quarterback to win games with. So solid defense, incredible a team in the trenches on offense. Just a fun team and a fun game and a fun rivalry and a fun day and a week of NFL football. Tomorrow night, we've got the San Francisco 49ers, who, after some offseason drama, seem to be pretty much at full strength going into this season, going up against probably the most interesting team in the NFL right now, the New York Jets, who, like the Lions, have been a sad sack of a franchise forever, pretty much, and have one of the best defenses in the NFL, weapons on offense like Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and an aging, returning from injury, Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. Tomorrow night will be interesting. I do think the Niners are the better team and are going to get the win. I need to see the Jets really compete, though. I think the league will be much better off if the Jets can be interesting and compete this year. So I'm hoping to see the Jets at least show some signs of being something special this year. So we'll find out what happens with that team and that game and that matchup on Monday Night Football tomorrow night. I, once again, am just having so much fun doing this show and making these videos. I will not every week talk about every single game. It's a bit exhausting. This is going to be another long episode, but I did for week one want to mention every team and kind of talk about what happened with everyone. But that is going to do it for this episode of the NFL KyroCast, this instant reaction of Sunday night football, Sunday football. So instant reaction of week 1 of the NFL season. Again, let me know in the comments how your team did, what you thought of week 1, what your biggest takeaways were. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a like on the video. That would mean the world to me. If you watched this far, it already has meant the world to me. But if you want to take it a step further, leave a like. And if you somehow watched all this way, but honestly thought I could have done a lot better, had a problem with my takes or the style of the show, anything to critique or comment on, you can leave a dislike if you feel compelled to do so. And then leave a comment, give me some feedback on how I can be better in the future. If you want to be a part of the conversation live in the moment, join the Discord. And if you prefer to listen to podcasts on Spotify, that is an option as well. Really appreciate you for listening and or watching. I have been KyroGus. This is Kyro Sports, and you've been watching the NFL KyroCast. I'll catch you later. Peace out. Mwah. See ya.